All right, so you want to become a real estate bargain hunter. Today, we're going to dive into a stack of Spanish language sources to learn the secrets of finding those amazing property deals.
These sources are awesome because, they really go beyond those basic tips and tricks. Like, they don't just say, do your research. They actually tell you how.
Right. So first things first, start with research.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not just talking about browsing listings. They're talking about, like really deep diving into market trends and using digital tools, but in like a smarter way. Anything there that kind of jumped out at you?
Totally. Like, they really push you to go beyond the basic real estate websites. Like, they talk about Facebook groups for local investors, even like specialized apps, or those forums where Spanish-speaking investors chat.
So it's like tapping into this whole secret network. That's amazing. I love that. And one source even had a sample budget breakdown. I mean, it had like everything: the purchase price, closing costs, taxes, even estimated yearly maintenance.
Oh yeah, that's gold. Especially for, first-time buyers. Like, that kind of detail helps you avoid those nasty financial surprises and really, helps make sure you're making the right decision.
Totally. Okay, so now buckle up, because the sources actually talk about bank auctions and how you can snag properties way below market value. Have you ever looked into those?
Yeah, I mean, the potential savings are massive. And the reason those properties are so cheap is that banks want to recoup their losses fast, from those defaulted loans. So they're willing to sell, like, even at a loss. So a savvy buyer can really, really clean up.
I bet. But I'm guessing there are some risks there.
Yeah.
The sources did mention some potential pitfalls.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's potential for some great deals, but you got to be super careful. The sources warn about like hidden damages, problems with the property that aren't obvious, or maybe outstanding debts, or even legal issues.
So like doing your homework is critical here, huh? Did they recommend anything specific to kind of protect yourself?
An inspection, yeah. Getting a qualified inspector is like non-negotiable. Like, they can spot those problems you might miss and give you like a real assessment of what the property is actually worth.
Great advice. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. What about finding those hidden gems in your area? The sources suggest, exploring up-and-coming neighborhoods, but like, how do you actually spot those, before everyone else does?
It's like predicting the next hot stock or something, right? Well, you want to look for places that are, on the upswing, but that haven't hit like peak pricing yet. So new developments are a good sign. Or infrastructure projects, maybe a bunch of new businesses are opening up.
I'll keep an eye out for those. Now, one thing that stood out was their emphasis on like actually connecting with real estate agents.
Yeah.
They seem to see it as, more than just finding listings.
Yeah, they really push you to see those agents as partners, not just salespeople. Like, building a real relationship with an agent who, gets you and your goals.
And they even said to look for, specific qualities, like they should have a ton of local experience and a great reputation, and be proactive about communication and have a strong network.
Yeah. So you want someone who will be your advocate, negotiate for you and help you through all the confusing parts of the process. It's about finding someone you can actually trust.
So remember those apps and websites? The sources actually list some popular platforms, some, the big names, and some that you might not have heard of.
Right. And they break down, the pros and cons of each one. So some like are great if you just want a huge list of properties, and others have like, those filters where you can really narrow things down, or even like real-time alerts when new properties pop up.
Oh, yeah. And some of them, like, use your phone's GPS.
Yeah.
So you can be walking around a neighborhood and, see what's for sale right there on your phone.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It really is. And it's just one example of how technology is making it so much easier, to find the perfect property.
Okay. But before we get too excited, let's talk about some red flags. Because the sources were like really upfront about the potential pitfalls, of bargain hunting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the big ones is a price that's just too good to be true. Especially in a really desirable area. It could mean, there are hidden problems, legal issues maybe, or a seller who just wants out really fast.
Makes sense. And they also mentioned a lack of transparency from the seller. Like, if they won't tell you about the property's history or, any renovations or potential problems, that's definitely a warning sign.
Totally. You want a seller who's upfront and honest, and watch out if they're pressuring you, to make a quick decision. A legitimate seller will give you time to do your research.
So it's about being patient.
Mm.
and really paying attention. And if something feels off, trust your gut.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's better to walk away than get stuck with a property that'll give you, like, a ton of headaches down the line.
Okay, so you've done your research, you found a property you love, you're ready to make an offer. Now what?
Now it's time to negotiate. And this is where it gets, really interesting. The sources actually have some great tips on how to, like, approach this part of the process.
What's their secret, for getting a bargain?
Well, first, knowledge is power, right? So, like, do your homework. Research comparable properties in the area so you know a fair price.
Yeah.
And then set your budget, what you're comfortable with. And this is key. Be ready to walk away if they won't budge.
Sounds like you need to be pretty confident.
It's not about like winning or losing. It's about finding a solution that works for everyone.
Right. And the sources also talked about, having your financials ready.
Oh, yeah. That's huge. Like having your pre-approval for a mortgage or proof that you have the money shows that you're serious.
And you know what else surprised me? They talked a lot about timing, like when to submit your offer.
Timing is everything, right? If you can like sense those market shifts, or find those motivated sellers, you can really snag an amazing deal.
So, okay, let's talk financing. It could be a big hurdle, especially, for those bargain properties. What did the sources have to say about that?
Well, they actually said to, think outside that traditional mortgage box. Like there are other options out there.
Like what?
Well, like private financing, if you know an investor, or those government programs.
Oh, yeah. There are those programs like for first-time buyers, and there are even investment funds focused on affordable housing.
Exactly. So there are like way more options than people think.
So we've covered a lot: research, tools, negotiation, even financing. But I feel like there's a bigger picture here, a certain mindset.
Yeah, they really emphasize being resilient and being willing to like change your approach. Finding a great deal, it isn't always easy. It takes like flexibility.
Like it's a real estate adventure.
Totally. And that's what makes it so much fun.
All right. So let's recap the key takeaways just to make sure it all sinks in.
Okay. So research is like your foundation. Understand the market. Use those digital tools we talked about.
And build a great team. Find that savvy real estate agent.
And be vigilant. Watch for those red flags.
And don't forget to negotiate like a pro.
And when it comes to financing, get creative.
These are all like super important. But it's not just about following the steps. It's about like really adapting and being creative.
It's like being a real estate detective.
Yeah, I love that.
You're searching for clues, putting the pieces together to find that perfect property.
So what does success look like for you? What are your goals?
Yeah, take some time to really think about that. Your goals, your vision for the future.
Like a compass, right?
Totally. It keeps you on track even when, things get tough. And remember, the market's always changing. So you got to stay flexible, keep learning.
Well said. We've got another deep dive coming up in our next episode.
We're going to explore. Well, stay tuned to find out.
Until then, keep those real estate dreams alive.
Yeah, it really is a journey. You got to be like strategic, but also, ready to adapt because the market's it's always changing.
That's so true. And it made me think, with those alternative financing options, how much creativity plays a role. Like it's not just about finding the property, it's about finding the solution, to make it happen.
Oh, totally. And the sources really emphasize that financing shouldn't be like a deal breaker. They talk about things like seller financing or partnerships even, or crowdfunding.
One source actually had this great example, a buyer who got a property through a rent-to-own agreement. So they could move in right away, but their payments, they eventually led to ownership. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, yeah. Rent to own, it can be a great option, especially, for buyers who maybe can't get a traditional mortgage yet. Gives them time to build equity and also, get a feel for the place before they go all in.
It's like a test drive for home ownership. Yep. And speaking of tests, the sources also mention, the legal stuff. Buying in a Spanish-speaking country, there are like some key differences.
Right. Yeah. The laws, the whole process, it can be really different. And you got to know those nuances. They mentioned, for example, the notary public, like their role it's way bigger than just, watching you sign.
Oh, wow. So like having a lawyer on your team is just as crucial as a good agent.
Absolutely. They can like help you navigate the legal maze, make sure everything's, legit, protect you.
And the sources even talked about investing in properties with like historical significance and how those can have, some unique advantages.
It is fascinating, yeah. Like to own a piece of history, and the sources point out like you often get tax breaks or even government help with, restoring the property.
So you're combining like your love of history with a smart investment.
Nice. And, one thing that kept coming up was the cultural side of things, like, building relationships.
Yeah.
Respecting local customs.
Oh yeah, real estate it really is about those human connections.
Yeah.
Taking the time to learn about the culture, building that rapport, it can make a huge difference.
Like when in Rome, right?
Exactly. And they give some great advice like, attending local events, exploring, chatting with people, just immersing yourself.
And they also keep coming back to patience and persistence.
Okay.
They say, finding a great deal, it takes time.
Right. The market, it goes up, it goes down. Deals, they appear and disappear. You got to stay informed, be proactive, and don't give up.
So you got to have that long-term vision.
Right. They even tell these stories of buyers who, had to overcome like a ton of obstacles, but they kept going, and eventually, they found that perfect property. Those stories are so inspiring. They remind you, it's not about being perfect. It's about learning and just keep moving forward.
And that's a big theme, becoming a successful investor. It's a journey of constantly learning.
Yeah.
And growing.
So it's about, always seeking out new knowledge.
Yeah.
And refining your strategies.
Yeah. And they even recommend like connecting with other investors, going to events, those online forums.
So you're building like a support system.
Exactly. And, speaking of community, one source mentioned co-housing projects. They're getting really popular in some areas.
Oh, yeah, where people, share ownership of a property and work together on decisions and stuff. Sounds kind of cool.
It is cool. It creates this sense of community, shared responsibility, and it can even be like financially beneficial.
So it's kind of like independent living.
Yeah.
But with a built-in support system.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting to see these new approaches to housing.
And it just shows how dynamic the market is, always changing, always offering new opportunities. So as we're, wrapping up this part of the deep dive, I'm really struck by how much wisdom these sources have, not just about, the practical stuff, but also the emotional side of real estate.
Oh yeah, they get that real estate can be like really emotional. They give advice on managing stress, staying focused.
They even talk about, self-care, like taking breaks, celebrating your wins.
Yeah, that's so important. It's easy to like get caught up in it all. You got to stay balanced.
And they also talk about giving back to the community.
Yeah.
Supporting local businesses, investing in projects that help the area.
That's a beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's about more than just a transaction. It's about becoming part of something bigger.
So as we wrap up this part of the deep dive, what are some of those key things that have like stuck with you?
Well, one big one is that growth mindset. Being open to learning, to adapting. The sources really push that. Like there's always something new to discover.
Right. It's about always being curious and exploring.
And building that network, other investors, mentors, even just having a support system of friends and family who get it.
Having those people around you can make a huge difference.
It really can. And lastly, I keep coming back to aligning those investments with your values, finding deals that not only make sense financially, but also feel good and make a positive impact.
That's beautifully said. And I think we're ready to move on to the final part of the deep dive.
I'm excited for it.
All right. So we've really dug deep into these sources, research strategies, even the emotional side of things. Was there anything that surprised you?
One thing that stood out was how they emphasize the community aspect, like seeing property as more than just a commodity.
I saw that too. They actually have like a whole section on the history and the culture, of property in Spain and Latin America.
Yeah, like One source even said to visit the local archives or historical societies, to research a property before you even make an offer.
Wow. Imagine the stories you'd find. It's like becoming a part of history. And it's not just, those fancy estates. They talk about regular homes too.
Yeah.
And how, they all contribute to the community.
Right. And they talk about, respecting the architectural style of a neighborhood, preserving its character, even like thinking about your renovations and how those will impact the area.
So you're not just an owner, you're like a caretaker.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really important lesson. It's not just about profit. It's about being part of something bigger.
It makes you, think about real estate differently. It's not just a transaction.
Right. And I think that's one of the best things about these sources. Like they get that. Finding a great deal, it isn't just about, the price. It's about finding a place that you connect with, that matches your values.
And that makes me think about all the amazing properties, that we've seen, the ones that have been restored so carefully,
right?
Or the ones that have like brought new life to a neighborhood.
Right. Those are the deals that really stand out.
And the sources say, it doesn't have to be like this huge thing. Even small things can make a difference.
Like planting a tree, supporting a local shop, just getting to know your neighbors.
It's those little things that can make a community thrive. And speaking of thriving, one thing that impressed me was all the stuff about sustainability. It's clearly a big deal.
Oh yeah, it's huge. And the sources have like all kinds of practical advice.
Like, energy efficient appliances, solar panels, even using eco-friendly building materials.
And they talk about transportation too. Choosing a place that's walkable, or maybe getting an electric car.
So it's about, those little choices that add up.
Right. And a lot of times those sustainable choices, they actually save you money too.
It's like a win-win.
Yeah.
You're saving money, you're helping the planet, and you're creating a home that's healthy and beautiful.
And it all goes back to that main idea, finding a great deal. It's not just about the negotiation, it's about finding a place that fits,
It's about finding a place that feels like home.
Mm-hmm.
But also, that inspires you to live a good life. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one last thought you want to leave our listeners with?
I would say, remember that finding that great deal, it really is a journey. It's not just about the destination. It's about what you learn along the way.
And never lose sight of that big picture.
Yeah.
Creating a home and a life that really reflects what you believe in.
Exactly. And remember that you have the power to make a difference in your life and in your community.
Well said. We hope this deep dive has given you, some new ideas, some practical tips, and maybe even a fresh perspective.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep dreaming big.
And until next time, happy hunting.